Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you tuned in last week, we got a sneak peek at the watch previews for the May auctions with Sotheby's and Antiquorum. Later on in the week, I got to sit down with some dear friends of mine, the Davidoff Brothers based in Geneva, Switzerland, and Jasper of Amsterdam Vintage Watches based in Amsterdam. For our first stop, we got to visit with Roy and Sacha Davidoff at their store in Old Town Geneva. It was really cool. We got to see some amazing watches and learn a lot about Speedmasters, which I didn't myself know. Enjoy. Okay, so we are sitting here with the brothers Davidoff, Sacha and Roy, and I asked them to pick out a couple of watches from their new inventory that they have not listed yet to show us, and I don't think they know the definition of a couple because they pulled out quite a few, some really cool watches that I'm trying to buy, but they want to sell them to their private clients. But anyways, if you are interested in any of these watches, contact them after. We will have their information in the description below. You can also find them on Instagram at Davidoff Brothers. So walk us through what you pulled out for us, please.
So the first one is a Snowflake Tudor, which was issued to the Marine Nationale. It's a Tudor MN 77. So MN means Marine Nationale, so it's issued to the French Navy.
Right.
These were initially a Navy order. Without the date, and then a few afterwards were sold off civilian, but they have an engraving on the back, so MN77, and they have that configuration, the blue dial, the blue bezel, and the
There's
Snowflake.
no Tudor MNs to my knowledge that have black dial, correct?
There is.
There is?
Yeah, but they're for a submarine, like it's a very, very specific batch.
Okay.
Why people like the blue snowflakes is because Rolex has never, to this day, made a stainless steel blue Submariner.
Right.
You can buy one in white gold, but there is no stainless steel Submariner. This is the only Rolex family Submariner with blue,
right,
that you can buy. On top of that, military issued. On top of that, like the condition. Yeah,
it's nice. That dial is beautiful patina too.
Stunning. I mean, they come in like different years, and you have like different engravings, different. I mean, things that you need to look out for. This one is not in the Toulon register.
Okay.
I think like 2 numbers above it and like a number below it are. So
right.
It's in the correct batch, but it was serviced in Paris.
Okay.
So only watches that were serviced in Toulon are in that register. So there's different naval bases, and there was one base in Toulon where the watchmaker kept records of every single watch in serial number, when it was serviced and everything. It's in the registers, and so you're able to check in that register if the watch.
And a friend of ours has a copy of that register, which is a
right. He owns the register, so he checks every time I get one. I call him, I give him the numbers. He checks. He's like, dude, the engraving is like perfect, but the service market side was like done in
another city,
in Paris, which doesn't even have a naval base there. But he said the serial number is like exactly in the correct batch. The engraving is 100% correct. Sometimes they appear in the register, sometimes they don't.
Right.
But like also, you just know when they're good.
What are you guys going to be listing this for, if you don't mind me asking?
I believe 33. So next one is a Daytona 6263 silver big red from the 1980s. So this would have been like towards the end of the run.
Yeah. This looks fantastic. I love how the crystal's still scratched up. Like somebody used this watch, but it's really, wow, the patina, that's like orange. It's got pumpkin patina. Really gorgeous watch.
So this, I mean, we bought it at auction, but it came from the original owner family. Yeah. How we like to find them, like honest condition. It's not perfect. It's not the old stock, but it's like really an honest watch.
Right.
And all original, all like every single part of that watch, like still has like that feeling that it just kind of like was born.
The grimy OG feeling.
Yeah.
We're gonna clean it up, and then the last one, Roy can jump in on this.
And by the way, you're gonna list these
under 100.
Wow, really? It's 100 Swiss though. Yeah. It's a little bit of a 10. It's like
10%. 90, probably around 90 Swiss.
By the way, I think that's a very fair price. I think you'll sell that really quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will hope.
Yeah.
Once we get it cleaned up, it'll be ready to go.
All right.
So there's a very good story with the American market and the Milspecs.
This is a watch I know and love very, very well. Let's show it to everybody as you talk about it.
Adam can even introduce this one. He knows more about them than we do.
No, go ahead. This is your time to shine, people.
The Milspec was used for the U.S. Navy, in America. They had even a special one called the Tony Grayville after the distributor. And this is like an oddball in the collection because this was a really civilian watch that was retailed through Abercrombie and Fitch.
Right.
And it's funny because they sold it as a demolition watch.
Right.
And a lot of people call it demo.
We call them the demo.
So
civilian or demo Milspecs, right.
So it has the...
that name comes from the Abercrombie and Fitch catalog, where it was like in between like a pair of boots and an umbrella.
An umbrella, yeah. You can actually, you can literally find that online if you do some Googling. So the particularity compared from this and other Milspecs is that it has the 60-minute fully graduated bezel.
Yeah.
It's going to have the Midi Curie -25 MC with the Swiss only dial, but it's still tritium. And the patina on this one has aged so well, and it has a single case back, because if you look at the other ones, the military proper ones, they have a ring that holds it back, that holds down like a dust cover, and this one you open and you have the movement.
Yeah, and then you have that like dust cover that says like, please return to your nearest
military
base. Right. Yeah, no, and you know the funny part is even though these were civilian issued, they're actually way rarer than
The
their
military
military
ones.
counterparts, and so few of them popped up. I've only personally, I think, sold 2 in my entire life versus dozens of Milspecs, and they end up being in better condition and much more well preserved, because I think because they were civilian issued, people bought them as like a novelty from Abercrombie & Fitch, but then didn't really use them properly as a dive watch like the earlier Milspecs were used.
In my experience, what I really like with this watch also is that I feel like it has a bigger crown than some of the military counterparts. So it just sits
easier to use.
Exactly. It sits on the wrist a bit better. It has a microbillet, how do you say it in English?
Oh, sandblasted.
Yeah, sandblasted case. Deep blasted case. Like all these little details make it look like
and
so
obviously
cool.
the signature on this watch is obviously the humidity meter.
Right.
That, I mean, they've all turned beige, but apparently when they were born, they were blue and green or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, they faded
Yeah,
away.
and so like it just over time the humidity, like it was basically an indicator to tell you if there was humidity getting in the watch and it needed to be serviced or the gases needed to be changed.
Yeah, it was more if you were diving and you got water in there, you know,
you needed to know.
so you knew.
So you knew to change the gaskets or whatever, and so all of them are like this cream and khaki color now.
Right.
Should be.
Should be.
Some of them are not.
But originally they were green and blue from what I've understood, and so they would turn to that color if humidity. I mean, obviously over like 60 years, you're gonna have like humidity getting in, so they'd all turn that color.
Right.
And also the patina, just like the look of the watch overall.
Nah, the condition's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Really, really great example.
And this is like so rare.
Right.
Like, look, I mean, we've been in the business 10 years. We've had 2. You've been like, and especially you specializing a lot in Blancpain. You've only had 2. Like, these are watches that like you can't pass it up.
Yeah.
Like, if one comes up for sale, like you. Like grab
to snatch it.
Yeah. I mean, vintage Blancpain in general, and I think vintage Blancpain got its surge several years ago when all the vintage Rolex collectors kind of ran out of stuff to collect, and they were like, well, what's similar, you know, and they gravitated towards Blancpain, and then
which was launched the same year,
right? And then people realized how special these watches were.
Some debate
Who
was first. But it's like the original dive watch is like what people like the Blancpain like hardcore guys.
But not
like,
only that, these watches are way rarer than their counterpart, Rolex Submariner. Absolutely way rare, way less production, way harder to find in good condition, and sometimes any condition.
And also developed with the French Navy. So at the time, both like the Submariner, like a lot of the watches, like where the French history of these watches is very rich. Because they were developed, there's like letters of like, you know, basically sending prototypes and like them saying like, oh, we want this, we want that.
Right.
And so these watches were like developed by like military divers like, for their needs.
Yeah.
And there's just something about the aura of
and even the
those
CEO
watches.
of Blancpain at the time was a diver, and he wanted to create a watch that worked for him as a diver.
Rolex also.
Yeah. Okay, so last but not least, you guys are obviously very well known as the preeminent vintage Omega Speedmaster experts and dealers. But you are. I mean, you guys have written books about them, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I asked you to pull out your favorite Speedmasters, and we got a little more than we bargained for. Let's hold up the box. So they pulled out
the Speedy Heaven box.
Right, the Speedy Heaven box. I'm going to take some videos so you guys can see all these crazy watches. But for the sake of brevity, I want each of you to pull out your favorite Speedy from that box and tell us a little bit about it. Wow. Quickly sniped. Now you have time to think about what you want to choose.
Okay, so the reference is BA3450802, solid gold sapphire caseback, and it was the first like serially produced sapphire caseback wristwatch. So it was launched in 1979, and the production began in 1980.
The first ones delivered were the white gold ones, followed by all the yellow gold ones.
Yes, and there used to be a letter that was included with them from Stafford because it was in order to commemorate 10 years.
This was produced in the late 80s, right?
Early 80s.
Early 80s.
This was 81.
So 1979 it was like developed and launched, and then 1980 the production began actually hitting the market.
Gotcha.
And they were delivered between 1980 and 1981. 200 pieces were made in yellow gold, 20 pieces were made in white gold, and they were predominantly all delivered to Germany.
There is an elusive like 22 or 24.
Although,
do you know why they were predominantly sold to Germany?
I think it was a special order from, I know that all the white gold ones were all delivered to Germany.
100%. I've even seen the records.
Wow.
So the archives. And so like these, I've only ever seen one delivered to the US which I bought like very, very recently.
Right.
And sold, and then some were delivered. So this one was delivered to Switzerland, and it came from Switzerland, like the crispest one I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was just about to comment, like how
incredible
sharp
condition.
this case is. Wow.
Like really, really well kept, and like owed to like Swiss owners or Swiss collectors that have like really, really properly kept the watch, never polished, barely worn, full links. Like,
so is this part of the Davidoff permanent collection, or is this watch for sale?
it's come back and forth.
Exactly.
I have listed and delisted the watch a couple times just because I'm like, I really don't want to sell it.
All right. Well, if anybody's interested in an incredibly crisp gold Speedmaster sapphire case back, you could try to convince the Davidoffs to sell it.
So it is listed on our website right now, I believe.
So it's for sale.
Yeah, it is.
It's for sale.
And it is incredibly, like, it's rarer than the Burgundy version. So
Interesting.
because the Burgundy was 1,014 pieces made, and this was only 200.
Oh wow.
So
significantly rare.
yeah, it's like
significantly
1/5 of the production, and so it's extremely rare. It has a historical significance. The first like open case back, the first decorated movement done on a Speedmaster, like on
They
the caliber.
changed the caliber. They added an L.
Yeah, it's
Right.
called
So
the
it's
861L, and it has 19 jewels. It's the only Speedmaster movement that has 19 jewels. It has the Côte d'Argent decoration. There's a lot of
I'm not
them.
sure you guys know enough about.
I'll stop talking. I'll stop.
So
Okay,
a few,
so
a
wait,
few
on
years
to
later,
yours.
a few years later,
Right.
they made the stainless steel version.
Right.
Which came out like 1,000, then 1,000, then 2,000, then 4,000. They made like many variations of it.
Okay.
So 1980.
1985.
So this is your
1985.
favorite watch in.
I'm going to follow on this one. They're all my favorites. It's very
I
difficult.
think I swiped it before.
Yes. So what I really like with this is that this was like a like a one-off movement,
Right.
and this became a production movement,
Right.
which was redubbed the 863.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the 861, 863. This is the 861L.
And the really cool thing is that this is one of the limited editions. It has the A with the short number.
Right.
1985. It was also the first stainless steel wristwatch with an open kit with a
Serially produced.
Yeah.
Birth year for me, baby. I should buy it.
The really cool thing with this is that it comes with a bracelet that is called the presidential bracelet, found on a handful of references. It's
show the
the
bracelet.
1450.
Yeah, the 1450 bracelet, quite rare, and it's a 3450808,
Yeah.
which is known as also the Apollo 11 open case back. Most of them are always nice to be worn because
Right.
the bracelet's really cool, and it's really found on Holy Grail. That's why the most popular.
Yeah, the bracelet's very similar to the Rolex presidential bracelet, so
I don't know why they discontinued it. They only produced that bracelet for 3.5
4
years,
years,
and so like I never understood why such a short
I feel like
run.
they changed their bracelet fairly.
No, they went
regularly,
back. They
you
went
know?
back to now the Nixon bracelet, as I like to I nickname it, because the first of the gold Speedies in 1969 was delivered to Nixon and his vice president Spiro Agnew.
Yep.
Yes, and the bracelet looks like this one. That's what
Now
we-
they brought that style back.
and now they brought that style back for all their watches. So basically, the thinner link
Right.
is satin finish on the plexi.
Yeah, I bought that bracelet for my silver Snoopy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
does.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
So anyway, so the one you're holding in your hands is actually very fun because the original owner wore it on a leather strap for many, many years.
Mhm.
That's why the case has a lot more aging than the bracelet, which is funny because I thought I was the only one to remove
It looks pretty
metal
pretty
bracelets,
nice though, you know.
metal bracelets and
Yeah,
put it on
the bracelet is like new though. Yeah, because we bought it on a leather strap with the bracelet like
on a really
bad.
ugly leather strap.
This is a watch where you have to like kind of appreciate
The finer details.
Yeah,
The
and also
nerdy
the-
details.
Yeah, because the real magic is really in the back of the watch.
And I feel like with Omega Speedmasters, there are so many more of those like small
Details, yeah.
details and incremental changes, but that like the real true Speedmaster community go crazy for and obsess over.
So, for example, this one, if you look at the bezel, it's a narrow C,
Right.
which was done from the fall of 1970
Right.
until the end of the 80s.
89, yeah.
And then you have the S, which is like a tall S,
Right.
because the later one was like fatter,
Yes.
thinner. So it
like,
has all the
seemingly like
The
all
nerdy
they look,
details.
They look very, very similar,
no,
but then
but
when
the
you really
look. The look
Yeah.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's
No,
what we base ourselves.
I love 80s, 90s Tritium Speedmasters as like perfect
Yeah, and
entry
like
point
nice
into
patina.
into a Speedmaster. Yeah.
like just daily wear, great watch.
Yep.
And we still believe it's been 10 years, and we're still in love.
Yeah.
I sold one yesterday. I'll probably sell one tomorrow.
All right. Well, awesome, dude. Thanks for pulling all this stuff out. I think we got to get back to the auction previews.
Yes,
because
yes.
there are a lot of watches for sale this weekend, but I am very appreciative. And guys, as I mentioned earlier, if you are interested in any of these watches or anything on their website, and if you're absolutely going to be in Geneva, this is a must stop for vintage watches.
Make an appointment. Make an appointment.
Make an appointment.
To see Roy.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Next, we sat down with a dear friend of mine, Jasper of Amsterdam Vintage Watches. Not only is he an excellent curator of amazing timepieces, but he's also one of the most interesting guys in the watch game. Hope you guys enjoy.
So one of my favorite things to do here when I come out to Geneva for the auctions is to meet up with friends, colleagues, collectors, and other dealers. This guy sitting here to my left, I very rarely get to see. What it's been, like 3 years?
First of all, what am I? A friend, a colleague, another dealer?
You're just a guy I know.
Set the record straight, bro.
This is the legendary Jasper of Amsterdam Vintage Watches. He is a vintage watch specialist from the Netherlands, like myself. I'm one of the pioneers, I would say, of vintage watches in Europe.
Go on. I like it.
I think that's good enough. That's good enough. No, but really a great guy. We will link his information, obviously, in the description below. If you don't already follow him, again, Amsterdam Vintage Watches, get incredible watches. So I ran into him. We had dinner last night. He pulled out some incredible watches at dinner, and I was like, listen, we need to film these while I'm here in Geneva because we never get to see each other. So we are sitting in my hotel room now, and he brought out some really, really crazy stuff that I figured would be really fun to show everybody and talk about.
You're far too kind, bro.
Yes.
Honestly. And the funny thing is, a lot of people out there think we are in a beef because we always give each other stick on Instagram. So from time to time, people ask me like, "This Adam, is he really that such of a dick?" I'm like, "No, he's a fucking great guy."
It's funny. People message me the same about you, like, "Oh yeah, that guy's the worst." I'm like, "No. He's actually like a really close friend of mine. We're just messing with each other." They're like, "Oh," and they feel bad that they said it.
But that's my way of showing respect. The worse I am, that means I like you the more.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to see, man.
And honestly, as I said, seriously, you said far too kind things of me. I only do this for like now 9 or 8 years. But you are one of the most inspirational people in the watch industry. That's the only nice thing I'm ever going to say to you.
We'll leave it there.
And it's only
because it's only going to go downhill from there.
Yeah.
So, what have you pulled out for us today? What do you have on your wrist?
Yeah, so starting with this one is a 5065.
I mean, not just any 5065.
Yeah, it's a pretty special one. I brought it specifically to Geneva because I wanted a different strap. Well, I actually want this strap, but it's pretty hard to match the strap to the dial because it's a prune dial. It's a pretty special piece. It came in a series with also a blue dial and a green dial. But where are you going to get the strap? And I tried to order it, but it's impossible. But at the Rue de Rhône, they had one, bro.
Oh, wow. Like, just had it laying there?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us about this. I mean, I've sold the green ones. I've never had any other color. Why do you think these were made?
So first of all, it's this one was sold by Antiquorum. It came actually in a lot with 3 watches. So the 3 watches were owned and ordered by a South American collector who ordered it
all
back
3 colors.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Consecutive serials also. The other 2 were also sold, but unfortunately left to an unknown home.
Right.
And I personally prefer the Plum or prune dial, whatever you want to call it. Was sold by Antiquorum.
Well, it's cool because it's not quite like a maroon color. It's not quite red. I think Plum's like a great word for it. Do you know how many pieces they made of these? No
I'm
idea,
not
right?
quite sure, but
Right.
this is the only one I've seen so far, but I hate to throw around terms like possibly piece unique or whatever.
Blah,
so I don't like to do that. But anyways, regardless, aesthetically it's a very pleasing watch because I prefer the 5065 over 5167 or 5165.
Same here.
Straight end links, you know, you have the grenade pattern really to the outskirts of the dial and really more depth to the dial.
For me, it's really just the size. I think the size is perfect. The 5167s and all the newer models, they're too big for me.
You have the 5165. You have the 5165. It's slightly
but then
smaller.
you don't have the tritium dial. You have only Lumi. This is like the perfect middle ground. The size is absolutely perfect at
100.
38 millimeters, and then you could still get a tritium watch. So kind of what we call neo-vintage, where you have that feeling of vintage, but it still has a modern sensibility where it's sapphire crystal. It's a sturdier watch. You don't have to worry so much about ruining it if you go swimming or this or that or the other, assuming your seals are done and everything like that.
Well, I just jumped in the water in the Lac de Geneva. Actually, I sent you the video.
Just so everybody knows, it's like 50 degrees out here. So
and that wasn't a joke.
Right.
I was wearing the watch, and it apparently, at least I hope, no water damage.
No water damage. Good to go. This is beautiful, man. So what are you guys, and if you don't mind me asking, if you don't want to say it's okay, what are you guys going to be asking for this watch? Like, how do you price something like this?
It's very hard to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But it's gonna be somewhere around the 200k euros ballpark.
Okay. So it's like a 3-4x multiplier over just a normal run-of-the-mill 5065.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, because I would say for every 1,000 regular ones, maybe you find one of a color dot.
Well, if I don't sell it for this amount, I'd rather keep it.
Right.
Because I don't want to sell it for 170k, because then I'd rather keep it. For me,
Right.
the watch is worth more. So even though there's no market for a watch like this.
There's no market, exactly.
But
It's
the market is in my head, and the market in my head is around 200k, and if it's going to be less, then I'd rather keep it in my private collection.
and that's sometimes the problem, and I've had that experience many times in my career of buying really, really unique and special pieces that there really is no market for, because it's not like they trade hands all the time. There's not a lot of auction results, so it's like, how do you ask a fair price, and how do you know what you're asking is not overselling, not underselling? It's you don't want your client to get creamed when he goes to resell it.
True.
No, I when you said that number, I wasn't like, oh my god, that's crazy.
Well, the
You
thing
know,
is-
I would tell you, I don't pull punches. I would tell you.
There you
I think
go.
that's reasonable, and like you said, if you don't get it, you keep it.
But that's the thing with these really rare
Matches your
watches.
shirt too.
Thank you.
It's cute.
You traded many of those rare watches too, and then there is no market. Like if you have a, let's say, 1016 MK5, there's a market because there's like 10 or 15 out there. The
Yeah.
cheapest one is 12k, the most expensive one is 20k.
Right.
Well, that's the market depending on the condition and
Right,
configuration
exactly.
or whatever.
Exactly.
But for this is just whatever you think it's worth, and I think it's worth X amount. And if somebody's willing to pay less, then I'd rather keep it. If I can, of course.
Yeah,
I need
yeah.
liquidity from time to time.
Sure.
But yeah,
No, dude, that's awesome.
caviar isn't cheap these days, bro.
All right, so there's 4 other watches in front of me right now. I've seen them.
Fuck,
I
I have
want-
another watch actually. I forgot
wow,
about
so
this
maybe
one.
5.
Sorry.
So we have 5 watches. You go dealer's choice. Which one you want to show first?
I'm
I
inclined to
want you
show
to
a
talk.
stone dial.
So we have 1601 Lapis Datejust, and you guys have really been pioneering these stone dials as of late. You and Ramon over in Dubai. I mean, we sell a lot of them as well. There's a dealer in Hong Kong who's really been selling a lot of them, but I see you guys have been really offering some excellent stone dials. No, I mean, listen, they've really shot up in popularity. I remember when I started in this business, going on 10 years now, no one really cared about them.
True.
They were almost like considered like a novelty, costume jewelry pieces, and now everybody wants them. And they are something special because you're talking about like a stone that's very sensitive and rare in its own right, fit into a Rolex, something that they only recently started doing again, and they're not doing it properly.
And they're unique by default because it's a
Right.
natural product, right?
Exactly.
So
Everyone's different.
Yeah.
Every
So I
stone is
sold,
different.
let's say, 20 Lapis, but when you pull the pictures together, there's not a
They-
single one the same.
and
And the
what
reason
kind of
why I
stone?
love this one is because it almost lacks any inclusion of perite or calcite. So perite is the yellowish inclusion.
You're a gemologist too,
I'm a
aren't you?
gemologist.
That's right. You're a
So
certified
therefore, it
gemologist.
combines my knowledge and my passion, my knowledge for gemology and my passion for watches. This one doesn't have inclusions. It's super bright, and therefore this is my very favorite 1601 Datejust Lapis dial that we've ever had.
Yeah, and the condition looks incredible. The dial looks perfect. I mean, I'm not looping it, obviously, but the case looks great. The bracelet doesn't look like it's too worn. I'm glad you brought this out, though. I wanted to ask you because obviously I'm working primarily in a U.S. domestic market. You're working primarily to, I'm assuming, serving mostly European clients, but we all have clients overseas from everywhere. Yeah. What is the demand like, and where are your clients based out of that are mostly buying these stone dials?
So first of all, the Netherlands. We have a lot of local clients.
Right, interesting.
Secondly, Italy is a good market for us. We have a lot of Italians. Germany and Belgium following closely.
Right.
We sell a lot to Hong Kong. Mainly via WhatsApp or Instagram, so just online. We have a couple USA clients, but you got that market covered, so there's not a lot of room left for us.
But the thing is with these watches is that it doesn't really matter where the dealer is located, because if somebody's looking for a 1601 Lapis in perfect condition, if you have it, they're going to buy it from you. If I have it, they're going to buy it from me. It doesn't matter if they're located in Hong Kong or the United States.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Yeah. No, I'm asking because we have a big surge in the United States. I have lots of clients who've been buying these up, and I haven't really been selling a lot to Europe, although I have been to Asia. So I was just curious how the market in Europe was for you for these stone dials, but it sounds like it's great. And I think what I just said, it's just simply a condition of you having the right merchandise there, and it's probably easier for them because it's EU to EU kind of thing, so it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think these have really finally reached like global status where it's not just like a niche group of collectors buying these, it's really everybody. And the auction results from this past weekend, I mean, there was many stone dials offered for sale, especially in one auction house in Christie's, And even some with cracked dials were still receiving great results and a lot of interest. None of them even came close to like being at the low estimate or passing. They all
3 years
went,
ago, cracked dials meant zero value.
Right.
Now these cracked dials are even fetching serious prices because people start to appreciate them a lot.
Yeah, I mentioned it on a past video that you really just need to inspect and check for cracks. And if you are buying with a crack, like we have a Lapis Day-Date right now listed, but it's $20K less than you'd pay for a perfect one. I mentioned that just make sure the price reflects it. There's nothing wrong because these stones were very, very, very fragile, and finding perfect ones has become extremely difficult. So yeah, this is awesome. I haven't had a Datejust version in quite some time.
Yeah, I personally prefer Datejust, if we can continue the subject of stone dials,
Sure.
over Day-Dates because you have more stone and it's even more simplistic.
I was saying that to somebody just 2 days ago, and I think the market agrees with that. I think the Datejusts have been fetching higher prices.
Except for Onyx though. Well, Onyx is a great gateway into stone dials because everybody loves it. Just aesthetically, it's very pleasing. It's very dark black.
Right.
It's super nice watch. But on those watches, we tend to sell the Day-Date so much easier than the Datejust because I think there's more status linked to the Day-Date.
Right.
And it's people that are buying their first stone dials that they might go for a Day-Date over a Datejust.
Yep.
But the Datejust are rarer and the Datejust are more stone for your money. So
it's a better aesthetic. It's more aesthetically pleasing. There's nothing to break it up.
Yes.
Well, let's stay with Day-Dates for a second. I'm
Yeah.
gonna pull this one out. Let's hold it up for the screen while you tell us about it.
So this is a pretty cool watch because I like the pinball setting, if you would like to refer to it like that.
Yeah.
And the color of the dial is very charming, so it's a little bit creamy, the thick
Right.
lacquer of the white. I don't like very bright white dials. For example, porcelain dials, I enjoy them, but I would never wear them because they just really pop off your wrist like crazy. And this one is a little bit more subtle, thick lacquer, pinball diamond markers. I'm a guy that loves diamonds from time to time.
Yeah, and I think the pinball settings and what he's referring to are the hour markers that are shaped like a pinball round instead of square or anything like that. I think it's a lot more subtle and a lot more elegant and just way better executed, than any other setting, in my humble opinion. And they're rare. They're fun,
and again, so for example, you're talking about a watch that's in the ballpark of 25,000 euros, but you get a real pretty unique watch. There's a very slim chance you're gonna meet up with somebody who has the same dial.
Yeah.
I rarely see this dial. You get to have a Day-Date, a full gold Rolex, one with a very special dial, one with a diamond setting for a very fair price.
And because of the strong lacquered finish on this dial, it's reminiscent of a Stella dial almost, and you're paying a fraction of the price, so there's a lot of value there. If you want a Stella dial in almost any color, you're starting at 40,000 and up.
Yep.
Let's say 40,000 starting for oxblood, and then just moving up on the ladder.
Again,
on the
condition
color.
is very important
Of
because
course.
there's also a lot of shattered ones.
Of
but
course.
yeah,
I'm
we're
just
good
saying
one.
at the very least, the very least starting price,
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I love this watch. I think it's beautiful. It's just subtle beauty,
That's the thing.
kind of like you.
They're all. Yeah.
Ooh.
This is a cool one that I'd like to show, not
Yeah,
necessarily just because of the watch. It's Cartier Tank Cintrée,
Cintrée, yeah.
the vintage one. So this Tank Cintrée, they make it in basically 3 sizes, the 7 ligne, 8 ligne and 9 ligne. We're talking here about the smaller size, so a lady size 7 ligne. I have that 9 ligne too, but it's priced crazy. Those are going for 80 to 100K now.
Yes.
And this is pretty affordable, beautiful lady piece. But I like the provenance about this watch because it was
Tell us about
ordered
it.
and purchased. It has no engraving, but it has
crisp.
paperwork.
No. I'm looking at how crisp the
Condition
watch
is
is.
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Looks like the dial is completely unrestored, and most of these dials, so you guys understand, from this era have been restored, usually by Cartier or another watchmaker. But even all of the hallmarks, Cartier engravings, everything on the back is incredibly crisp.
Who was the husband of Brigitte Bardot back in the days? The gentleman, the snobistic gentleman.
I don't know, but I guess some people in the comments will tell us. But so that it was
That
that's the
guy
provenance.
purchased it for one of his girls because he was a playboy.
Okay.
So he had quite some girls.
Right.
And even the girl who owned the watch because she passed away, she was also pretty famous. But I forgot the guy's name. But he's a very well-known snobistic gentleman.
Okay.
Known for his style. So that's a pretty cool story. So I think it's a great watch at the price point.
Right.
But I'm actually bringing
Where
it
did
here.
you find it? How did you get it? The provenance aspect of it.
Good question. So his girlfriend or muse, whatever you want to call it, brought it into a gentleman's place in Germany
Okay.
because she's German. The guy is also German, but I can't figure out his name now. I'll Google it or
Right,
whatever.
right. Somebody will tell us. I
Somebody
promise
will
you
tell
that.
us.
I promise
There
you
go.
that.
And he bought it from her, and he messaged me on Instagram, and I picked it up because I like the story and I like the guy, even though I forgot his name, but he's a very classy gentleman. He has crazy style, so I purchased it. It's like let's say the German Steve McQueen,
Right,
so
right.
king of cool, but then German. So I thought the story was cool and the price was fair. So we're talking a little bit around 15 to 20,000 euros.
Yeah, and I was literally just about to ask you what you guys are going to ask for this watch, and it's such a great piece to get. I mean, presumably a man could wear this if they're comfortable wearing smaller watches.
True.
But if you wanted to get into the largest size Cartier, especially something like in this condition, Paris style, I mean, you're talking well into the six figures at this point.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think this is a great entry point, and these are quite rare too. You know, they're
True.
not easy to pick up. They're not easy to find in this condition,
Condition.
at all.
Condition is important.
Yeah, exactly. You know, all of the Cartier from this era, whether it's tank Cintrée, regular tank, Santas, whatever it is, finding unrestored examples has just become mission impossible.
All these dials are either restored
Yeah.
or just shitty. Yeah.
Exactly. They weren't waterproof, so they really, you know, got deteriorated very easily, and finding them like this is incredible. This is a special piece. It's not particularly valuable compared to what else we have on the table here, but it's special because of the condition.
Well, I brought it
and
to
the story.
It's going to be an auction.
Right.
So I brought it to
Oh,
put it
you're
on
auctioning
auction.
this?
Yeah, I'm going to
Okay,
auction
cool.
it. So let's see what it fetches, but I think it's a cool watch with a cool story.
Now,
so
I think
that's
it'd
the
be
thing.
interesting follow-up. Why did you decide to auction this versus sell it yourself?
Because I do like the story, but I don't like to have all this storytelling with loose ends and blah blah blah. I think auction houses can sometimes do it better.
Do a better job of telling the story.
And my clientele is like 91%. Well,
Men.
my following is 91% men,
Right.
and my clientele is like 99% men.
Right.
So I think it might also be cool for a lady to pick it up, and it's
Right.
easy to reach her.
Yeah,
perhaps,
there's a lot
by the
of
auction.
there's like a really burgeoning group of women entering the fold into vintage watches. So
True.
I don't know. I think if you listed this, you might have a pretty easy time selling yourself.
Well,
but
perhaps.
it's also sometimes fun to roll the dice and throw it at auction.
That's the thing.
That's
So
it. Maybe it goes for 50K. You never know.
well, yesterday it wasn't fun. I lost 100K on the Cartier crash.
Oof.
Yeah, the platinum
Oof.
one. So that wasn't so fun. But maybe we'll make up for it with this.
Yeah, you know, listen, it's part of the game. So
Yeah.
sorry to hear that, but
Well,
I had a couple mishaps in auction. I didn't quite lose money, but a watch that I had in auction, I had an offer privately for it for significantly more than it sold for in auction. Unfortunately, the client never got back to me in time, and I was tired of waiting, so I put it in auction. It was another watch that don't know what it's worth, kind of like your Aquanaut. You know,
Yeah.
it's just so unique, and it sold for a lot less than I could have got privately. You know?
Auction is a gamble
Right.
in the end, and people also need to understand that auction prices doesn't necessarily reflect the market. For example, the Milgauss that sold now for 6.41.
Yeah.
I sold a prime example a year ago that was really pristine for
And I would say
500K.
even better than the one that was sold.
For
in
me,
auction.
yes,
I
for
saw
sure.
your watch.
I hate to say that,
Right.
but for me that watch was better. It didn't have box and papers.
Right.
But okay, this one fetched the 2.3 million all in. That's crazy. And my
Well,
watch fetched 500.
And also, people need to look at that result and also understand, which has been reported on Instagram a lot already, who the buyer was.
Yeah.
It's no secret. It was Rolex that bought it for their upcoming museum. I've heard there's works for them to do a museum or at least a display. They also bought the John Player Special for 1.8 million hammer, so over 2 million all in.
CK in pink gold.
JCK in pink gold, which was an average watch, condition-wise, for a lot of money. And they also bought the 6270 for close to $4 million.
Yeah.
Although I would say that watch, maybe it's not worth quite $4 million. It's worth a huge chunk of change, and the price wasn't absolutely crazy.
For me, that price
the
is
Milgauss price,
respectable.
right? The
The Milgauss
Milgauss
was just out
and
of
the
the-
JPS price were
Yeah.
a little, you know, the
Yeah.
Milgauss was out of control.
The thing
you
is,
know?
a 6270, where are you gonna find that watch for less than 3 million?
Yeah.
It's barely
no, you're
impossible.
not. You're not.
And in the end, a Milgauss 6541, you can pick them up between 200 and for a pristine example, 600, 700. If it's really crazy like
Right.
this,
Right.
700K would be top, but 2 million doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think probably somebody got carried away bidding, didn't realize they were bidding against Rolex, and
Yeah.
Rolex, they just literally Statue of Liberty, hold up the
Carte
paddle, and
blanche.
just the carte blanche. They could just, I think they have no limit. Their marching orders are, we want the watch, come home with the watch.
Well, actually, Philippe
You know?
from Rolex Special Report, I spoke to him yesterday. He told me that the lady was just sent out to buy the watches, and she had a list with the watches and the lot numbers, but no price.
Yeah.
So just bidding until you have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently.
I was sad. Well, I was interested in a lot that Sotheby's sold, a 6542 with amazing provenance. It was like the
Also
original
sold to
advertisement.
Rolex, right?
Yeah, also sold to
Yeah.
Rolex. I never got to view it during the previews because it was out somewhere. I'm like, okay, I'll come back the next day, and then I totally forgot about it because I wanted to bid on it, but it was okay because
You would've
there was
lost.
no way I would have won that versus Rolex. There's
It's
not enough
great
money in
though
the
if you
world.
brought the watch in auction.
Yeah,
Like if you brought the 6x41 in auction and
Yeah.
you think you're gonna walk out with, on a
Yeah.
good day, 800K.
Right.
You're walking out a
Well, I
million.
thought the estimate on that watch was 500 to a million Swiss francs, which I thought was very aggressive, very very aggressive.
Yeah.
I thought there was a good chance it could pass, because I think that
I
was
said the same thing
yeah,
the day before.
yeah. And so, but hey, here we are, a world record for a Milgauss, and Rolex got the watch they wanted, I guess.
As I said, the auctions are a gamble, and I lost, and they won.
Yeah, somebody won, not us. So we have a couple more watches here. We have two Patek Philippe's. We have a 3800 in yellow gold, 3800J blue dial. We have a 3940. I don't know what metal this is because I'm holding it up to you guys. It looks like yellow gold.
Yep.
Looks like a second series.
Yeah, early second series.
Right.
It doesn't have the crosshair in the year thingy, so
So what is your opinion on these watches, 3940s? What's your take on them?
I love them.
I love them too, and I think they've been so undervalued for so long. And I think people are finally, in the past couple years, picking up on like how special, great these watches are, and they're not just like an old man perpetual calendar Patek anymore. And there's a lot of younger crowd getting into it. You have Rob Stakey pioneering them, who's Bizamo on Instagram. A lot of guys. I've sold a few of them in the past 12 months, and it's always, I would say, 40 years old or younger buying them, and it's really surprising to see that. So. Tell us about this example.
So I was starting to look at them, both 3940 or 3970, the chronograph
Also
with the perpetual
undervalued
calendar,
watch.
undervalued in my opinion, or even 5040 with a different case shape, because at a certain point these Nautilus and Aquanauts were getting so expensive. I was like, okay, but wait, a 5711 is going now for 180, but I can buy this watch with a perpetual calendar for 40 or 35 back in the days. I was like, okay, well, it makes no sense not buying these.
Right.
So I started buying them. I started loving them. Again, it does feel still a little bit like an old man's watch, but that's the cool part about it too.
Right.
So even if you wear it casually, it looks very cool and it looks out of the ordinary. And I would definitely look a second time or look twice if I would see somebody wearing this, of opposed to 5712.
To
or
me,
5711.
somebody wearing that is somebody who knows what they're doing. They know about watches. They're a true fan of Patek Philippe as a brand, not just as a hype to buy Nautilus or Aquanaut. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with buying a Nautilus or an Aquanaut. And I have plenty of clients and collectors who own Nautilus, Aquanaut, and other things as well. And they're not just focused on that. It's not just like a hype thing or like a status symbol wearing an Aquanaut or Nautilus. Like, I think people who really appreciate the history and, the passion of watches are into these.
For sure. And I love the sizing. So like
Absolutely.
36-ish compared to the 5140, which is later, that has a bigger case size. For me, it's slightly too big. So I like the 36, and I like the font and the graphics more on the earlier versions.
Well, you mentioned like the 5040, the 5040, which I also love Perpetual. I think it's very undervalued,
cool.
but it's a tonneau-shaped case, which is not for everybody. This is a round case, perfect size, and I've seen the trend. I don't know if you guys see it in Europe. I've seen the trend in the United States, at least, with people being okay wearing smaller watches. So 34 to 38 millimeter, everybody's okay with that. Even if you have a bigger size wrist, it doesn't have to be 40 plus anymore. I think people understand. I mean, I'm rewatching The Sopranos right now, and it's like Tony Soprano wears a 36 millimeter Day-Date.
I would never wear a 40 millimeter Day-Date.
Right.
I
No, me
promise
too.
you now, you can shoot me if I ever wear
I
that
assume
watch.
you have
I
a
will
similar
never.
size wrist.
And I don't even
It's just
care
that-
about the wrist size, just proportion wise and historically speaking, the 36 is the right size for the Day-Date or the Datejust. I even like those pictures, like people wearing a 31 millimeter Datejust, like guys wearing them, because that was a boy size, like a mid size. And that is dope too. And when I start wearing smaller watches, like 31, 32 millimeter watches, then there are a lot of people looking at the watch like, okay, that's interesting.
What
Let's
is
talk
that?
to
Because
guy.
it's so small, it attracts the attention,
And if they
like-
wear a 40 millimeter Submariner or whatever,
Everybody knows what
everybody's
it
like,
is
yeah,
right
okay,
away.
whatever.
So in the same vein, I prefer the reference 3800 to the 3700 jumbo because of the size. So we have a 3800 blue dial, and I think especially I sell a lot of these to Asia, for example, and I think there's been a huge push on these. The prices went up. They've cooled down a little bit, like everything else in Aquanaut, Nautilus. But I think these, in the same vein as the 3940, are just like the perfect compromise in terms of having the right size on a watch.
Yeah.
So.
And it wears very slim because it's a slim case, so it's nice on the wrist. It sits very well there.
Yeah.
And opposed to the 3700, also price-wise,
I don't mind the 3700. I just think this, for my wrist personally, it fits better.
3700 is a great watch. I never wear it, but I love to have that watch. It's a beautiful watch and historically important. But also what I like about the 3800, there are more varieties.
Right.
So this is a pretty straightforward
Absolutely
one.
true.
It's just a blue dial and a yellow gold, but you have these the diamond set dials, you have these diamond set bezels, stuff like that.
Different case material too. You know, like I think Chrissy just sold the platinum one with a white diamond dial. You know, you don't see that really on the 3700, and if you do, it becomes like $1 million watch. You know,
that's the thing.
So
we sold the platinum 3800. I think 2 weeks ago. It fetched 150K or so for a platinum 3800.
If that was a 3700, I don't think they ever made a platinum. I know they made white gold. It would fetch millions of dollars. You know, just because of what it is.
So they're cool watches, nice to wear.
So the last one, I think I'd really love for you to tell us about and the history about, because it's something different. I know the history's a little muddled. I personally don't know about this a lot about this watch because I never had the opportunity to buy one, so I never really piqued my interest enough. You know, there's not a lot of these around. So I'm going to hold this up while you explain to everybody this special piece.
So it's a bit debatable. It was sold for like 200 whatever by Philips as a prototype dial, but let me please emphasize it is not. It is a COSC test dial. Unlike, I saw the prototype on auction 2 days ago on Christie's, the Moonraker.
Okay.
That didn't do so well either, so again, auctions are a gamble.
Right.
But this dial is a test dial, so it was for watchmakers within Rolex when they do the COSC testing of the movements, in this case the caliber 4130, they made this dial so you don't get distracted by anything. It's just plain and simple time measuring.
So this is a 116520 with a 4130.
Yes,
so
and I also have the one with the 16520, but of course the different subdial spacings.
So, and it's interesting because they would never. It wouldn't make sense for this to be a prototype dial, in my opinion. Why? Because when we show you the watch and you're able to see it more clearly, people watching this, it's just not legible. You know, there's no way Rolex would have gone to market with this. It's cool to look at. It's very interesting, but there's absolutely zero way that they would have produced this, especially during the era. There's no way anybody would have bought it.
But that's the way you have to look at it. Exactly. Interesting, and in some sense, it's a conversation piece because you can talk about it.
That's what it is. It's a conversation piece.
Be like, okay, what's that? Tell me about it. So it's cool. It was never born in the watch, obviously. I'm not selling the watch either. I made this for the client. So my client wanted this dial. So we arranged the dial, we put it in, and he's enjoying it. You saw him yesterday.
Okay.
So it's actually not my watch.
Right.
But I arranged the dial for him, and I wanted to show the audience.
To show it?
Yeah,
okay,
for
cool.
sure.
Yeah,
I wanted to show the audience because they also need a little bit of because a lot of people are saying prototype this, prototype that, blah blah blah. This is not a prototype. It's dope regardless.
Right.
But for different reasons.
What's your opinion, if you want to share, on all the Singer prototype dials that have found their way into the
watches?
Yeah, into the world.
Yeah. Well, again, they're interesting watches, or interesting dials, or interesting parts, and that's the way you have to view them, and that's the way you have to value them. So it's a different thing as it's not a piece unique. They're prototypes. That's a totally different thing. They're not born in the watch, but still, for me, there's added value to a lot of them. Sure. Because sometimes you can see some design studies and stuff like that. So historically speaking, it can also be interesting. For example, the Moonraker ones, you could see it was like a transitional model.
Right.
And for me, that's a pivotal execution of a very important watch, and therefore I have it high in regard. So I think the value is this or this. But again, there's no market to that stuff.
I think there just needs to be more education, especially if one of those comes to market. People need to understand what it is, you know, how it came to be, and then let the market decide as to what it's worth. You know, it's a watch, obviously, that was never born the way it's being offered for sale, and you need to understand where the parts came from, how it was, how it was put together, how it was made, and what the value is. Which I think that's why I've never dealt in any prototype or stuff like that, COSC spec watches, because they've never been offered to me. First of all, not for lack of trying, but also because I think I'd be too nervous to take a shot putting out my own money on something that I don't know the value of.
Yeah, because you have to decide you have to decide the value for yourself.
Right.
What do you think this watch is worth in this configuration?
Right.
That is a question only you can answer, and to somebody a prototype dial is worth 0 premium, and to somebody it's worth 100K premium or 50% premium or whatever. So that's an answer only you can give, but indeed education and transparency, those are important factors that come to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, what do you think about the auctions this weekend?
Broad
picture.
Across the board, I think the market is healthy. I saw good results for good watches. bad result for bad watches. Some exceptions here and there. You picked up a pretty cool piece, in my opinion, one of the best.
Pieces, I think.
Yeah, well, the one you just told me about in the lobby.
Yeah. The AMAC.
Wow, that was a beautiful occasion to buy a cool watch.
Right.
But overall, across the board, I think it's the results are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of really surprising results. Some things that seem like they sold low. I'm going to talk about it in another video, but it's always important to consider when you're looking at results, especially on vintage watches, that you have to look at the actual watch. Because so many times people will see a result. There's Antiquorm today sold a 6241 Paul Newman Daytona for $145,000 Swiss hammer. So plus 25%. So converted, let's say that's around $200,000 US. And that seems very low for that reference, but the watch was very average. It was all original correct, but it was just the dial was not very nice. The lume was all black. It was just, so when people see that and they're like, oh my God, the market's crashing. Meanwhile, the 6239, which is generally cheaper, I was actually bidding on this watch in Sotheby's that was in really nice condition, sold for $30,000 more. Yeah. Which generally should be cheaper, but the watch was a lot nicer.
That's the thing. I sat in a room with you, a 5510 I saw at Antiquorum with the wrong dial. Right. And sure, then it's a low result. But if you have a 5510 and you think, the market is dead now because this watch sold for half of the price I paid, well, it's not. 3970 sold with a second series handset like the Leaf hands, but with a third series dial. Well, it's put together, so it didn't fetch a good price because no collector is going to buy that. So I do believe that.
And I think a lot more people are educated now. You used to see these kind of watches sell 5-10 years ago in auction all the time, no problem, because people didn't understand what they were buying. And I think in the past 4 or 5 years. Specifically, there's been a lot more education and people are paying a lot more attention, which is a great thing, I think. It makes our jobs easier too, as well.
Well, I think that is also our job, right? Because if somebody else would go and buy that watch, then you would know, you would help them to say, okay, this is not that watch. It's better to buy from you, right? Because it's penny wise, pound foolish. A lot of people try to do it themselves. They don't have the knowledge. It's better to go to you. Just buy the seller. It's a cliche, but it's
a cliche, but it's true. And then guys like us will always stand behind what we're selling as described.
My guarantee is until the door then.
He's joking. I know he's joking, and it's funny, but these are our stand-up guys over here, and everybody who's watching this video, I'm sure most people already know who he is. So, well, dude, thank you so much for showing us these watches. This is going to make a really awesome video.
I have one request. Can we maybe
unbutton your shirt a little more?
Well, maybe we can end the video with like a slow motion kissing scene. Or this is like a casting couch.
This is like a casting couch in my hotel room. We will do a slow motion handshake. We'll save the kissing for off camera. I don't know how much everybody's want to see it, but that wasn't slow enough. Thank you, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for joining us today.
So that about sums up my Geneva watch week during the May auctions. We'll see you again for the November sales. We'll see you in a few weeks for some behind the scenes footage of the New York City June auctions. And really hope you guys enjoyed watching this. If you did, please always remember to like, comment, subscribe, anything you can do to help us grow the channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.